my sweet friends, I hope you are all doing well. I thought I'd drop in today and share some of my favorite tips and tricks on how to create arrangements with large dimensional flowers for my cards and folios. I typically like to create with focal images and use my flowers to accent those images, but for today, the flowers are going to be the focal point. Now, if that sounds good to you, then stick around and we will make it together. Before we get started with those flowers, I do need to create a base to add the arrangement to, and I just have a standard size greeting card. It's 6.5 by 5, and I am already adding a layer of pattern paper and cardstock to the inside, so it will be nicely finished, and I can come back later and add a section for a sentiment to be added. I do want to use that same pattern for the cover, and it's just sort of a peachy pink color, and I'm pairing that with a buff or a fawn color for my cardstock, so that even though this does have some color, it will be fairly neutral. And this will also add quite a lot of thickness and bulk for this card, and you definitely want that if you're creating with a very large flower arrangement. So I do want to add a layering pattern, and I have this one. It's very similar, but it just has a little bit of a different scale to it. I have my cardstock border added here, and for this layer I want to add foam spacer so we can begin to build some dimension. And so this is just going to go right in the center. And so now I really want to focus on keeping my flowers and all of the trims within the smaller section here so that it will be well supported. I've got a die cut here, and I didn't have quite enough space from one strip to cut this full banner shape, so I just cut it in different sections and joined it together. But I think that rose gold polka dot is actually quite nice and will add a little bit of sparkle. So I'm just going to add this fairly close to the side, and that is because I do have quite a lot of my flowers and leaves coming from this corner. So now what I want to do is add a doily, and I would almost always, more than 99% of the time, cut my doily from a crisp white cardstock, but I'm going for more of a neutral toned down palette for this card, so I just use my scrap cardstock for that. And so this is kind of that buff or fawn color. I did want to have to cut only one doily for this project since quite a lot of it is going to be buried underneath those layers, so I just cut that and then clipped it in half. And I do want to make sure I'm keeping those points, those fragile bits, on this same layer. Want to anchor some of these lighter colors, and I think wood grain is a really nice option because it is fairly neutral and will go with pretty much everything. I cut this with a scalloped edge stitched circle die for some additional detail, and popping that up with foam tabs again, still continuing to build up those layers. So I do have my sentiment. It's stamped, and it's just one of those little gifts with purchase you get from Lawn Fawn, but I find it to be a very nice size if you want to cut it with a small banner shape so that you can have a nice die cut sentiment sticking out. So I want to add this, but I want to make sure that all of my other layers fall where I want them to. So I'll just kind of flip this over upside down, and that will give me a visual representation of where I ultimately want this to wind up. I'm just going to scoot this to the side for a second so that we can cover those flowers. And the other, as you can see here, I have a couple of different varieties of flowers and also a couple of different depths of height, and really want to focus on that so that we can build up to the thickest one, the one that will be the most dimensional. This one is actually a trellis rose from Really Reasonable Ribbon. Now you see that it's a little bit smaller. I usually choose to order the larger ones, and then I can come in and pull this back layer off. So what I'll get from that is this, and for every 2 trellis roses, I'll get one of these layers. Now I can add these together and add my stamen to the center, and I'll essentially get 3 flowers from 2. So for me, that is a better value. And I do want these to be quite large. Remember, we're anchoring a center, and then we're going to build up to that. So I also have a chrysanthemum here and a rosebud, a couple of different sizes. I found these in that same pretty earth tone. This is the mixed earth tones, and so it's very neutral and very pretty. And I'm going to pair those with a stamped leaf, and I cut this out with a little border of the white showing. That will make it look a little bit more like purchased ephemera. And I've also got a variety here of skeleton type leaves, and these are really going to act as fillers, so it's going to be a really nice full arrangement. I picked up a placemat from the Dollar Tree. These are easy to cut into portions, and I use these for glue mats. Everything that I glue to here will be easy to pull back up, so I can create my arrangement off project and know where everything is going to land, and then I can pull that back up and move it to my card as one single unit. And so that is very helpful to know where all of the bits are going to land. So the first thing I want to do, remember I have my larger flowers that are going to anchor the center. When I add these together, you see there is quite a lot of depth. And so we're going to fill that in after we attach them. I think hot glue is the best bet for working quickly. And so this is going to act as the large center focal portion. Now you've got a place here that will be filled in with a chrysanthemum. So you see, when I set this down, that is bringing the depth down from the top of that trellis rose. And so we're kind of gradually moving the depth down to where we can add our leaves. So let's add that now. I'm just going to push that into place so that I know I've got a good contact into that glue. And then for this side, I'm also going to add a flower that will gradually decrease the depth. And so this is just another one of those from Really Reasonable Ribbon. And I honestly have no use for these greens. I typically always die cut my own foliage, and these never match. So I just always pull those right off. Now what I want to do is add this at an angle so that I can decrease that depth. So now what I want to do is bring that in, you see, and add that here. So let's add that one. I've got 4 of those smaller rosebuds, and I have combined them into pairs just by wrapping the stems around each other. And that'll just be the last little bit we add that will bring us down to the level of our leaves. So let's go ahead and move this aside and bring that card back in. So what I want to do is add this larger leaf, and I'm going to balance them top to bottom. And so I do want to keep in mind where this banner is going to wind up so that my sentiment will show. And I'm just going to tap that in there with some hot glue. Then for reference, I'll move this portion back so you can see how everything is starting to line up. Good time to add my sentiment because I do want to conceal the cut edge underneath those layers. I'm just going to pull it closer to me for a second so that I can get this on straight. I put that on foam spacers as well, so we're just continually adding more and more depth. And so now it is the time to think about those other leaves that were die cut. Now these are like a skeleton style leaf, and I want them to be kind of filling in that arrangement. And so I'm just going to tuck that in there. You see, position these exactly where I want before I add any more glue. And I like where those are falling, so let's put our glue on. I had a couple of store-bought leaves here, and they were actually attached to some of my little birdie craft flowers, and I decided to cut different foliage for those when I was working on the project. But I did just collect all these and then store them together, so when I want to use them, I know that I have plenty to use as filler. Also helping to disguise some of those cut ends as I'm working along. Now I do also have a couple of loopy twine bows, and this is my Ivory burlap string from Really Reasonable Ribbon. I'm going to fold that back onto itself and then just trim off the excess. Easier to do this now than when it's glued on. We have one for this side. And then one set of these smaller rosebuds. I'll just repeat that process for the bottom side as well. You can see how nice it is to be able to bring these flowers in and out as I add each additional layer, so that I make sure to have everything positioned exactly where I want. Now I've got that one last set of rosebuds. Let's have one last addition for my flowers before I glue them down. And that is some beautiful taffeta ribbon tied in a bow. This coordinates so perfectly with those flowers. Don't have a lot of room left for a dangly charm, but I think I can incorporate a couple of these pretty little sequins, and that will help to bring a little bit of detail to balance our sentiment. I just want to add those with some Tombow. That's going to be it for today, and I really hope that I've given you some confidence to work with some of those larger, more dimensional flowers to create the focal points for your cards. If you enjoyed this tutorial, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. Remember, there's links in the description for the flowers and trims from Really Reasonable Ribbon, as well as our socials. And I'm always wishing you a happy and productive day, and I thank you so much for watching. Bye!